Hello and welcome back to There's a Book for That with me, Rumbi, your host. This week we've been talking about the theme of love as part of our Valentine's Day extravaganza. And as I come to the end of this week and my reflections on love, I realize that most of what I've been talking about, the central theme that I've been looking at, is loneliness. As human beings, social animals as we're frequently told, it's natural for us to seek human connections. Part of this need is met, or at least it should be, by the families that we're born into, our first community. This should be enough to ensure that we feel whole going out into the world as adults. But sometimes that first community fills us with doubts and fears and releases us into a large, frightening world, our spirits riddled with as many holes as a Swiss cheese, dripping insecurity and vulnerable to abuse. This lack of proper grounding, secure foundations, can often lead us into terrible situations, and today I'm going to talk about two such situations, one thankfully fictional, and the other unfortunately not. At some point last year, 2023, I started reading this book, Mon Mari, by Maud Ventura, in which the unnamed narrator speaks of her love for her husband and illustrates throughout the book how it consumes her every waking thought. Her love for this man has made her crazy, and she goes so far as to say that she does not love her kids to the same extent that she loves her man. The events of the book take place over the course of a week, from Monday to Sunday, each with their own colour scheme, and it's all quite a ride. The book is in French, so my translations are very rough, but it begins, quote, "I am in love with my husband. But I should rather say, I am still in love with my husband. I love my husband like the first day, with an adolescent and anachronistic love. I love him as if I were 15, as if we had just met, as if we had no ties, no house, no children. I love him as if I had never been left, as if I had learned nothing, as if he had been the first, as if I was going to die on Sunday. I live in fear of losing him. I fear every moment that circumstances will turn wrong. I protect myself from threats that don't exist." End quote. As I read the book, I kept rolling my eyes. Again, my silly habit of judging books by their covers has landed me in hot water. I had wandered, somehow, into the first-person perspective of the sort of women who regularly animate social media channels with their conservative views about men, women, children, and sexuality. If you spend any time online, you'll have encountered this trend at least once. We go over the same subjects: relationships, men, women, children, marriage, submission, LGBTQ community, and so on, ad infinitum. Conservatism, which continuously brings these conversations to the fore, is informed by the male patriarchal desire to maintain power and the status quo, fine, and the female hope of achieving positive proximity to it. I frequently approach these conversations from a feminist point of view, refusing to believe in the idea that anyone can be better than anyone else simply because of the view between their legs. So right from the beginning, I was dubious about the contents of the book having anything to teach me. It turns out I was wrong. And the book, in tandem with the social media circus, which occurred around the time I was reading, did teach me something, or at least give me something to empathize with those women with whom I frequently clash on the other side of the divide, the so-called pick-me-sha, that male-centered woman who genuinely believes that she'll be completed by marriage and babies. For the first time in my life, I understood her, at least enough to stop rolling my eyes for a while. So the book continues, quote, "She was of pride." She's talking about her husband again. "She was of pride." You can assume when I'm talking about the book, she's talking about her husband. "She was of pride when I mentioned that my husband works in finance at a dinner party. When I tell my daughter's teacher in front of the school gates that it's my husband who will come to pick up the children on Thursday. When I go to get pastries from the bakery and announce that my husband placed an order on Tuesday. When I say with a falsely detached air, while in reality I find it infinitely romantic, that I met my husband by chance at a rock concert. When someone asks me how we met, my husband no longer has a first name. He is my husband. He belongs to me." End quote. Oh. Is the literal title of the book, so she means it. I told myself it was fiction, so obviously this would never happen in the real world, only to come across those TikTok videos, if you remember at the time, of Derrick Jaxn's interviews on the Dear Future Wifey podcast. I had no idea really who she was. I had seen the Helmet of Salvation video before. Again, didn't know who she was, didn't pay attention. But when I saw these videos now and I went down the rabbit hole, it was a lot. Derrick Jaxn, now the ex-wife of the controversial love guru Derrick Jaxn, who was exposed for being a serial cheater in 2022, became famous herself for the role that she played in this Helmet of Salvation video that I saw. In the video, she defends her marriage, saying, quote, oh, and remember, she's wearing army fatigues here. She's dressed up like she's in the army, you know, that brown and green, and she's wearing a black bonnet. She says, you see a bonnet. I see the helmet of salvation. You see an army green shirt. I see the breastplate of righteousness. I see the belt of truth and the sandals of peace, the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and the shield of faith. I've come to the battleground covered in the blood of Jesus to proclaim victory over sin. This is spiritual warfare, and if you're not prepared, you do not know what to do, you will drown, and you will be a casualty in this war. I did not come here to play games and to play dress up. I came here in my battle suit. I came here on the battleground, covered in the blood of Jesus. End quote. Marriage was obviously a big part of Danae's identity, being Mrs. Jaxn, just as our book heroine loves letting the words, my husband, roll off her tongue. She, Danae, was also tied up in being married, or at least in an on and off relationship, being Jaxn's significant other since she was 19. Criticism of her husband was criticism of her too. But it should be noticed that the reason that people were criticizing him is because he's a love guru who was charging people for his books about happy marriage. They wanted to know if they were being led astray. But obviously, when your identity is tied up in someone else, obviously what hurts them hurts you. Fine. But maybe it hurts you even more because you don't have your own identity to fall back on. Much like our unnamed heroine, Derrick Jaxn was protecting herself from unseen threats. The only difference being that in Jaxn's case, they were real. Derrick, the husband, was out in them streets with numbers suggesting, listen, that he slept with up to 100 women since meeting his wife. They met when they were both 19. He's a few months older. And since meeting his wife, in 10 years, he slept with up to 100 women. Somebody do that mathematics for how many he was doing a year. And then remember that there might be repeats. Let me keep quiet. The problem is, with women like Danae who see the problem and diagnose the disease very well, the cure is frequently another problem. So, further cementing herself as a male-centered woman, willing to make other people the problem rather than focus on the source of her misery, her husband, she also then released a meandering, hateful message cursing those who dared to speak on their names. Quote, every person speaking against the names Derrick Jaxn and Derrick Jaxn in mockery, I think it includes me at this moment, accusation, slander, and lies, may the mercies of God be withdrawn from you. Too late. Already happened. May your husbands and wives become widows. I think that's extreme. Let your children become fathers. Listen, what? Let your seed become vagabonds on the earth. Let the words of your mouth and the work of your hands be returned to you. Let it go down your throat and choke you slowly until your days become few on the earth. You should see her face when she's saying that last part. She means it. This quote is from the Bible, from the book of Psalms, apparently. So she had taken this matter to the Almighty, and this is what he came back with. Imagine you pray and God says, you know what you can do? Make a video and curse people on the internet. Watching this video, because now I was down this rabbit hole. My first thought was just like, okay, why do these kinds of married women act like there's nothing else in life? You don't have a hobby? If your husband is cheating on you, why is that the internet's problem, man? We are over here trying to make dinner, and now we have to stop and make popcorn to sit and be watching your TikToks, watching your Instagram to find out what's going on in your disastrous marriage. Anyway, I say that. That's how I wanted it to be. I wanted to just be like, oh, this is light-hearted mess. You know, like when you watch Love is Blind and everything is just cringe, but you're watching, right? But then I decided to watch the full interview on the Dear Future Wifey podcast. I'd never heard of it. I've not watched it since. It's not my kind of thing. I'm too busy watching military history podcasts because I don't want to be happy. But I was like, I need to understand this lady, right? And also because I was reading this book and I had started to see, you know, things, similarities. So I watched the video, and Danae relayed her life story full of pain and disappointment. I was struck by the similarity between her story, between her, the lady in the book, and myself at 23. We were all defined and driven to extremes, but I loved that I could never feel the emptiness and the loneliness that came from deep within. In the case of me and Danae, we were like, you know, smart book people who just want to read books quietly. Also very religious. I was at that time. So I took some time to put on, you know, her tight little shoes with my big feet. And I didn't like these shoes. I had discarded them a long time ago because I was saved by multiple disappointments, which rendered me cynical enough to walk away from the unpredictable and unreliable affections of a man. My disappointments meant that my eyes got opened, right? I was disappointed early on, but also not so early, you know, like at 16 or something. I had a period of time where I was on my own into my 20s. And then even that disappointment, it wasn't like a relationship. So I had a lot of time to be on my own. And I always, you know, say that time to be on your own, it gives you time to really stand firm in yourself. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I was disappointed at that time. But as I was listening to her and I'm like, she met this guy at 19. What would have happened? What would have happened if I had hung around, if I hadn't walked away, if I had enough coming back for me to be like, this is worthwhile, let me stick around. If I'd, you know, stuck around long enough to become the only option, the winner, as Derrick Jaxn describes herself when she's talking about the fact that, you know, Derrick married her, you know, she felt like the winner. There were all these other girls, but I'm the one who got him, right? So what if I had never stepped forward and progressed from that first love, which seemed to take over my whole body and forced me to play detective, wondering, what's he doing? Oh, does he care about me? Blah, 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 you know? What if I still had that obsession? What if we had gotten married when I was at high on that level of obsession and I got stuck in that life? What would I have done? Who would I be today? Would I be happy? I wasn't sure. And as I said at the beginning and in a previous episode when I spoke about myself at 23, loneliness then was a big part of my story. Life wasn't going the way that I wanted, and marriage, as everyone knows, is a huge step forward. The Campaign to End Loneliness, an organisation based in the UK working to do what it says on the box, have a report about loneliness. They did it during the pandemic, but they have regular reports. And they say, quote, "Loneliness happens when the social connections that people want don't match their actual experience of relationships with others." End quote. When thinking about the pick-me-sha phenomenon, as it's called, the ladies who act as though marriage is a panacea for all the problems that they might be facing in their lives and the value placed upon it, I'm forced to think back to being 23 and my frustrations with my life, or being 28 or 33, or even just yesterday, you know? In fact, you can often tell how well I'm doing in life by whether or not I want to be in a relationship. It's my litmus test. For me, the mismatch between what I want and my actual relationships is less focused on other people and more on myself and my achievements. Am I winning? Am I accomplishing something? Am I moving forward? Am I learning? Am I growing? If it's a green light for marriage, if it's a green light for a relationship, I'm probably feeling very low about myself and unaccomplished. That's when marriage rises like the sun, shiny and golden to save me. Because even if you've not achieved anything in life in terms of career, which is my priority, which is what I would like to do, everyone knows that marriage and family are generally considered the biggest and best achievements that one can attain in life. All wives and mothers are winners. So marriage is always a solution. If you're feeling bad about yourself and you get married, that's it. You scored a big goal. You have, a trophy. In the book, our unnamed narrator, I'm going to just change her name. We're going to call her something French. Geneviève, only because we've been talking about Lancelot. And the husband will call Francois, very French. So Geneviève is talking to her friend Lucy. Lucy is actually named in the book. It's only the husband and wife who are not, and the children. Lucy's complaining about her sister, also has a name, as the sister has a very dramatic romantic life. There's always a problem. There's always some drama. Lucy's had enough. She outlines the heart of her sister's problem with scalpel-like precision, saying, quote, Lucy tells me that her sister is experiencing true love again with her second husband. But it won't last. I'm waiting for the next disaster, she adds. Why are you so defeatist? Are Marion's loves doomed to be unhappy? And Lucy says, I'm convinced of one thing. If my sister is so obsessed with love, it's because it prevents her from thinking about her real problems. Love is entertainment. It's so much easier to cry on Monday because of her first husband, with whom she says she will be in love all her life, while getting back together on Wednesday with her second husband after having experienced a dazzling passion with a man she met on a train the previous week. It's easier to cry because of a man than to think about her cancer, which hasn't let her go for 10 years, or the fact that she was unable to have children. Fascinated, I listened to Lucy's very elaborate speech on love as entertainment, while wondering what about Marion is in me. So this is our heroine, Geneviève. She's saying, am I like that? Yes, she is. And in a future episode, I'll talk about French philosopher Blaise Pascal and his views on divertissement, distraction. Basically, this thing of looking for entertainment to escape life, and why human beings are so drawn to it. But for today, for this episode, suffice it to say that while my life isn't dramatic, because I don't like drama, I like to keep things steady, I like to keep things boring, basically, I definitely do retreat into romance. It's nice to have someone to talk to about other things, or other than whatever actual real life catastrophe one may be facing. As I said in the previous episode where I spoke about this, that at 23, my mom had, finished chemo, but at that time, she'd gone through, well, maybe it was a bit older. Anyway, she'd gone through cancer, she'd survived. I was at uni, I was trying to make a life for myself, and maybe I wasn't even 22, maybe I was 23, I was younger. And basically, it was just a lot, and I had to be very responsible, and I was working, and I had another auntie who was also sick. She didn't make it. So when I met this guy, I think it was just a really nice escape. I think I was like Marion, the sister in this situation, using all these things as an escape, because if your biggest problem is that somebody didn't send you a text message, or you don't know if they like you, it's a much better problem. It's a much easier problem than, I think my auntie's going to die of cancer and I have to manage all these things. Do we have money for rent? Are we going to be okay this month? It's just much easier problems to deal with. And I think on and off, I definitely do that now because honestly, if a man doesn't like me, it's not the end of the world. It's just something to talk about with your friends, But there's some things that are real that you can't talk about because people don't want to hear it or, whatever. So I completely understand that viewpoint that is laid out in the book. And I think in the case of Derrick Jaxn, it was probably the same kind of thing, because for her, she cites how only 3 weeks before she met Derrick Jaxn, she was raped. by someone who would have been basically a friend or a friend of a friend at a house party. So what if, like Derrick Jaxn, you found somebody only a few weeks after that kind of experience, which she says she didn't talk about. She didn't tell anybody. She didn't tell her husband or this guy that she was in the relationship with, Derrick, for 6 years. But now, at that time, 3 weeks after the incident, there's this person, this handsome man who just comes to her like a gift from the gods. He's happy to talk to her every day, telling her he loves her. You're the love of my life. Where have you been? Making her feel special. She was away from home at university. She didn't have anybody to talk to. And now she's been in this terrible situation. She's obviously seeking refuge. And then she finds this person. When you love out of a place of pain, as Danae did, we can surmise, no one can fill that hole. Because basically what's happening is that you just need a place to take refuge while you heal. But if you don't do the healing, if you just take the refuge and you don't do the healing, the world that you build in your head is so immense and so full of dreams that you don't realize that no one can be what you need, even if they wanted to be. In thinking about the brutality of Danae's response to her critics, that misdirected rage, I wondered what it must be like for people in relationships, especially those who go to the trouble of getting married. Listen, while I might love my family, my friends, they love me, whatever, I love my home, my career, my hobbies. None of those people or things have made a vow to love me. None of my plants have made a vow to honor our commitment and support me through the journey of life, which is why they keep dying, bastards. The love shared in relationships is not the same. Vows and promises and commitments are made, sometimes in front of witnesses and at great cost. Children are forever, and by having children, one implicitly agrees to be a part of another person's life for good. I know now people are just running away, but the children are still there. These are valuables worth protecting and perhaps worth defending with harsh words and curses such as Derrick Jaxn employed. I'm not saying I would go that way, but okay. She's not alone in this. She's not alone in feeling that this is something really valuable to be protected. As young women, especially I speak for myself and people like me from African backgrounds with religion thrown in the mix, we were set up to believe that the love of man, maybe not even the love, just the marriage, the institution of marriage and the care of children would be these eternal fires that would warm our hearts and our weary bones. Unfortunately, most of us grow up and find that this is not necessarily the case. There are thousands of videos and academic studies which attest to the frustration that countless women feel within marriage, faced with tradition, weaponized incompetence, cheating, and general thoughtlessness. Yet all the evidence to the contrary notwithstanding, new generations are still brought up to think that marriage is a necessity. Oh, you're gonna die alone with your cats, blah, blah, blah. Aunties are still teaching women that your husband is your first child or that kind of nonsense. Motherhood is the ultimate fulfillment of your potential as a woman, blah, blah, blah. Submission is godliness. We're still raising young girls to be wife material. There's good girls who obey the rules and, women who do chores with a song in their heart and know their place and defend their right to be less. The idea of wife material is also very much rooted in conservative Christian ideals, and they play out in quite interesting ways when it comes to the traditional wife lady and how she will approach other women. In the book, Geneviève meets her husband for lunch, and they are served by a young girl, leading to honestly one of the most disgusting things I've ever read in a book. Quote, "When the waitress brings us the menu, her youth and beauty unsettle me. I don't let anything show, and I rationalize. This young woman is very beautiful, but my husband would never leave me for a waitress." There is this expression in English, untranslatable into French, wife material. When I met my husband, I knew immediately that he would be excellent husband material. That is to say, a potential husband. He had everything that he showed: the social background, the good studies, the professional situation, the elegance, the build of a husband for me, and that of a father for our future children. So let's say it frankly, this luscious waitress is not wife material. I have no doubt that she would make a very good mistress. He could meet her a few times at the hotel, be satisfied with her very smooth skin, come between her breasts, but he would never introduce her to his parents. He would never take her to a dinner with colleagues. He would never father a child with her. In short, this waitress does not pose a serious threat. End quote. So this hypervigilance, I think, is normal in lonely people. You use relationships to fill the gap. They sit on a bed of gold like Smaug the dragon. I don't know if you've watched Lord of the Rings anyway, but that means that you need to protect it. You have something valuable in your safe. You have to protect it from every threat, visible or otherwise. But even then, I was really shocked at the sexualization of this young woman. Like, you know, she's young. So late teens, early 20s. And you're thinking about your husband's sperm between her breasts. You're thinking about this woman with your husband. She said, "Can I take your order?" And your mind went there. Come on. I think it's good to value what you have. But the level of insecurity that it takes to look at somebody like that, I think, is why I enjoy being single, because my mind is quiet. Where do you go from there, like mentally? You yourself, after having that thought. Anyway, the campaign to end loneliness states that for the lonely person, quote, "The individual is forever appraising others for their potential as providers of the needed relationships," which is what she does to the husband, right? She's like, yes. "And forever appraising situations in terms of their potential for making the needed relationships available. Loneliness produces an oversensitivity to minimal cues like 'can I take your order?' and a tendency to misinterpret or exaggerate the hostile intention of others." Listen, if someone can't just take your order and go without you going through that, you're in crisis. In the same way, Danae's talk about a battleground and her curses directed at unseen enemies are very much like the dressing down that Genevieve silently does to the waitress. In both cases, the aim is to show that one is the winner. Genevieve does it by showing that she's wife material, and Danae with Christianity. It makes sense when you think about what it takes to get married, according to the accepted wisdom. You have to keep yourself looking beautiful, make yourself acceptable, not too educated, not too uneducated. You have to diminish your light for your man. We're always told men don't like women who insert perfectly normal thing here. Be his peace, cook, clean, wash, take care of him. Let him be a man, share his burden, treat him like a king, make him feel special. Let him chase you. Don't play too hard to get. Do this, do that. Cut yourself in two so that he will love you and put a shiny rock on your finger and tell the world that you're valuable in his eyes. It's a lot, and a lot of us fall by the wayside. But what of those who jump like obedient seals through every hoop? For the good girl who obeys the rules, there should be a reward. This is justice. To be a so-called Pygmisha, traditionally minded, male-centered woman is to believe in an elusive justice. It is to accept that one lives in water and to make peace with always being a little wet. What is now being called an acceptable level of permanent unhappiness. The amphibious among us know that we don't have to live in the water, and so would rather explore a different way of life away from the constraints of heteronormative lifestyles, child-focused futures. But of course, this has its own consequences. Both Derrick Jaxn and the unnamed lady in the book, our Genevieve, share this wonderful marriage-guaranteeing trait. In their love for their husbands, they found ways to diminish themselves, to be quiet, to constantly move their boundaries, their hopes, their dreams to their internal worlds. In these worlds, what needs to be said is said forcefully even, but externally they keep the calm so that they continue to keep the love. As Danae says in her interview, she didn't want to lose him. Yet in all that effort, she lost herself. For ultimately, within the boundaries of conservative Christian marriage, this is what it means to be wife material. The wife material wife breathes quietly, so as not to worry her husband, so not to bother him with her heavy breathing and her suppressed tears. She can't afford to lose him. She has secret rooms or closets in Danae's case, where she cries to let out the spiky feelings that cut into her, so that she can go through another day without telling her man that he is the reason for the feelings. Their worlds revolve around his happiness, his needs, his comfort, his wish, their every command. Another quote towards the end of the book reveals just how bad it can be, as Geneviève talks about the ways in which her life revolves around her husband, saying, quote, "Sitting at the breakfast table, I analyze our bodies. I realize that I lean towards my husband when he speaks to me. It is my body, not his, that moves. I change position. I approach. I twist my neck. My husband stands with his back straight and looks straight ahead when he eats. Me, I'm wobbly and unbalanced. This truth strikes me when we get up to get more coffee. My husband's chair is perfectly centered. Mine, on the contrary, is turned to the left, aimed at my husband's. I am convinced that if I made a map of my daily micro trips, the route would reveal the following disposition. My husband is the sun around which most of my movements revolve. I will greet him in the hall when he comes home in the evening. I sit next to him on the sofa. I come closer when he's talking to me from the kitchen. I am in the living room. For him, I change rooms. Because of him, I'm always the last to leave the table. I turn off the lights. I follow him up the stairs. I stay in his shadow. I go behind. On the other hand, my husband is not influenced by my own comings and goings. My gravitational force is never strong enough to knock it off course." End quote. I did something bad while I was doing this podcast. I listened to the music that I was listening to sort of 10, 15 years ago, so to try and get back into that zone of feeling how I felt when I was feeling this level of strong feelings. And honestly, by like an hour in, my heart hurt. I had that familiar pain. My body knows those songs. And it responded to them. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, I remember that feeling. I remember that pain, like just having that ache in your heart. And I was really overwhelmed with sympathy for my sisters living like this, for years or decades. Because unfortunately, while single people like myself may be less stressed according to all the studies, maybe even happier, there are no ready-made communities for single people. One has to get out there and network and engage and remember people's stories and get, act interested in 100 people just to find like 5 people with whom you can vibe and feel at home. If you're married, if you're a traditional lady, there are in-laws, there are other married couples, there are religious organizations, there are meetings, there are schools, play groups. There's a host of places where you can go and find support and find people to talk to. This, of course, applies to single parents, although the dynamic can be very, very different because with men as the prize, other single women are often viewed as competition. So as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about, looking at somebody like Danae, she was my friend, and just saying, you should just leave him, is to ask this woman to give up all that community for an uncertain one. And that's not fair. Ladies like Danae succumb to the sunk cost fallacy because after giving it 5 years, they just can't give up. They convince themselves they have to try harder to make it work until they are watching videos of their husbands having sex with other women in the effort to be more desirable by doing more of what he likes. You heard me. Yes, she said that she watched videos. Danae, the real person, not the fictional one. Quote, "I knew several other women's bodies better than I knew my own. And I spent a lot of time. I went into such a deep hole where I was like studying these women. I would go to their profiles. I would study their pages, what they were. I knew when they'd met up, so I watched videos of them having sex. How did she get the videos? So I tried to imitate that and recreate that in our relationship so that he would choose me and want me. And that is a low point to be in. Come on, guys. My head hurts. Do you even exist at that point after making all that effort to become a porn star to please a man? And then after all that, some randoms on the internet start talking about a marriage. It would seem like a real insult to the efforts that people don't know. Like, people will be talking, oh, blah, blah, blah. They don't know that this is what you've had to do. You had to go to porn school in addition to having his babies, taking care of his home and whatever else. Obviously, you're going to be vexed, isn't? All the little slights and injustices in the home itself, they don't know about. Obviously, you're going to fight to keep that intact. Otherwise, the past however many years would be a waste of time. I get it. The problem is, with the sunk cost fallacy, it's a fallacy. It's bad thinking, okay? Basically, what the sunk cost fallacy says, there's a point at which you put in a certain amount of time or effort or money, and it's still easy to walk away, you know? Like 2 dates in, 5 dates in, 6 months in, you're like, oh yeah, I can break up with this person, I can go. Then there's a point after which walking away becomes increasingly difficult. After you move in together, after you get married, after you have a baby, those kinds of things, right? Fine. It's the same thing like if you started a business and for the first year, for the first 2 years, your business wasn't doing amazingly well, but at least you were breaking even. So you were not losing money, right? Then after a point, something happens as a downturn, you start losing money in your business. The point where you were still making money, but you saw that things were about to be bad, was the point when you should have left. Or 2 or 3 months after you see that, okay, so I've only been breaking even when things were good. I've started to lose money because things are bad. How will I make money in a worse economy than the economy where I wasn't making money? You understand? If your business was okay for a while and then it goes into the red, like let's say during the pandemic, a lot of business owners had this. From that moment on, when you're not breaking even, when you're not getting out as much as you're putting in, every day after that is a loss. Whereas if you come out while you're still breaking even, at least then you don't lose anything. But the problem is, it's basically like gambling, and a lot of people become addicted to the hope of that one big win. If I do this thing the right way, he's going to love me. If I say the right thing, if I don't say the bad thing, he's going to love me. If he sees me like this, if I cook this meal, it's going to work, it's going to be enough. Again, I think I said it yesterday or the day before, or maybe I've been saying it all week. I don't believe that anybody where you have to be auditioning for a role that you already have. You're the girlfriend, but you're still doing auditions. There's nowhere else for you to go. It's not going to get better. It's not going to get easier. My strategy now, after doing those auditions for the role that I already had, is to disqualify myself at break even. Because break even is actually not what I want. I want to be making a profit. I want to be winning. I want to have more, you know? If I'm giving 100%, why am I settling for 0? Why go through all of that just to stay at break even? So for those of us who've been able to say, I'll do without, we can't even begin to imagine the hunger, for it must be, you know, a primal need that drives certain women to denigrate their own, like what these women did with, you know, the waitress and Helmet of Salvation, and shrink themselves in an effort to be picked. My own loneliness must be different as president of the Save Yourself Live Today Club, for it allows me to set boundaries, to say no, and to walk away. And while I still consider that a positive, reading this book and watching Danae's interviews, I honestly developed a deeper understanding of how deep the roots of patriarchy go, how easy it is to become codependent, how difficult it can be to leave, especially when one truly believes in love. I had to examine my own life, the gaps, the places where I lack community as a single person living in a different country away from home and family. And honestly, I've never been so aware of my own frailty. Some days I'll have like a near fall in the bath and I think, if ever I really fall, it's a wrap. I'm going to die. My life is so silent. I don't have regular contact with anybody. Nobody would notice. Most weekends when people are busy, I don't really talk to anybody. I stay home, I read my books, maybe play a game, watch TV, go for walks. I love the cinema, I like to swim. So even my leisure pursuits are solitary. So making friends is not easy. I was once advised to join a hockey team. And I think it's a good idea. But if you don't want to be dependent on strangers, then you go home to your parents or you get married. We have computers in our pockets, but community has really not evolved, which is why, we're talking about loneliness so much. No one signs up for their husband or their partner to sleep with 100 other women under their nose. No one signs up to show ass on the internet cursing strangers with Bible verses. What you do sign up for is to be loved and cherished. And when those things don't work out, what do? How do you just drop everything and go? Being single is what makes it easy to drop everything. In my case, yes, 100%. I'm a dropper. I will drop everything and everybody. But what do you do when there are children in the mix, when there's shared property? Who gets the wedding photos? Who gets the friends, the favorite cafe? It's not easy. I'd like at this stage to compare the two women and the striking similarities that I found between them. Which I suppose means that the book is well written, but also means that our good sis Donnea really suffered for 12 years. Number 1, Genevieve never mentions her own family, parents, siblings, cousins, whatever, nothing. Her entire life is invested in her husband and she has neglected everything else. She has one good friend and she's on some level aware that this is a failing. Quote, "In short, my husband's charisma distorted my judgment. Today I wouldn't say that I regret this choice, but I realized that the price to pay was very heavy, much heavier than I had anticipated. If I had chosen to be loved rather than to love, I would undoubtedly have made a better mother. I would also have had the mental availability necessary to form great friendships and have real career ambitions." End quote. This is in the context of her saying that she knows that she loves her husband more than he loves her, and that she's been in a relationship with that person, loved her more. And she says everyone has to make a choice to be the one doing the loving or to be the one who's loved. And this is the choice that she made. And I found that really interesting because maybe it's true. In the case of Derrick Jaxn, we can definitely see that if someone allows you to go out and sleep with 100 different people and just stays and tries to make it work and still defends you, like, that's a serious level of love. I can see why she was so mad, because you want to be rewarded, that justice. You want this person to value your loyalty. But I don't know how we make those decisions. Me, I'm team arranged marriage. Maybe that's just my cop-out so that I don't have to deal with these questions. But I had a friend back in the day who used to say, charisma is important, but character is vital. It was like his email sign-off message. And I always used to think about that because I have a weakness for charismatic, self-confident men. I really like being with people who feel confident in themselves. Unfortunately, that means that the way that people are, most people don't feel confident about themselves without putting somebody else on a lower rung. So it means that either I am being dazzled and not dazzling myself, or I'm dazzling and not being dazzled. Whereas I believe that, there's mutual dazzling. But if you get dazzled, you're like a rabbit in headlights, and it's just not a good place to make decisions, is it? I always tell my friends, some people are only for play. You don't build your house on sand, folks. You go to the beach, you have a good time, you get half naked, you play volleyball, you get your feet wet, you eat fish and chips, you eat rock candy, you go on the rides. But when you're tired, you do what? You go back, you find somewhere where you can build strong foundations and a house that will last. Sandcastles are for babies. You can't marry someone in whom you will lose yourself like that. Come on now. 2. That was only number 1. 2. When Genevieve asks her husband for the 3 words that he would use to describe her, one of the words that he used is very beautiful. The other one that he uses is... The word that he uses to describe her, basically in English, would say she's a lover girl. She's someone who's in love with love itself, the idea of it, all the stuff around it, the Valentine's Day girl, you know? That's why she's talking about her husband for a whole book. And she basically says, yes, of course I'm that. I love you. You're my husband. And he says, no, you don't love me. You love the idea of love. And I think that's very dangerous while we're here. We must love the reality, you know? Not just the idea. This is the problem with, you know, this diet of romance and Valentine's Day that we're fed. It's not real. Anyway, when Geneviève asked her husband for 3 words that he would use to describe her, one of them, he says she's very beautiful. Danae also notes that to Derrick, from Derrick, his compliments were very much focused on the physical. But honestly, I looked at this woman. I couldn't take my eyes off her. She's incredibly beautiful. Go Google her. She's incredibly beautiful. Her Instagram picture right now, oh gosh. You know, I looked at this one. I say, so Derrick, what do you want in life? Because there's no way that you're telling me it's because this woman is ugly. That's why you're going around looking for somebody else. Listen, if I look like Derrick Jaxn, I would be matching Derrick. My ratio might even be higher. 5-1. Yes, God knew what he was doing when he made me an ordinary, forgettable person because, Derrick Jaxn. Come on. And then at some point they're talking about how she used to be chubby. I looked at her when she was a bit bigger. She was even prettier then. You know, me, I like the big girls. And she's not big. She's like a size 10. But, you know, her face is rounder and she looks maybe, I don't know, maybe things hadn't got to that level. She looks more relaxed. This woman is wow. 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 But this man still got up. Listen, every time that I see how men put these beautiful women who stop their lives for them through the ringer, I remind myself that beauty, despite everything that we're told, is just not enough. Without the decision to love you and be kind and the conscious decision to be faithful to you, you could be Beyonce and this about to go off on a rant. These 2 ladies find it difficult to openly and honestly speak with their men. As I said earlier, I have an awkward and off-putting personality. I came from a home where I didn't speak. I had no feelings, just attitude and silence because I knew from experience nobody was listening. Fine. Over the years, I learned to speak, and one area that I've never held back is in relationships with men. I started out timid, but even if I was crying, there was one guy, I tried to break up with him a few times. Literally the worst relationship. The worst. 6 weeks. I was just like, every day, I need to get out of this. I need to get out of this. I was crying, talking to this man, please let me go. But I was still talking. I was still fighting. I was still saying something, you know? And I think this is why, you know, I'm off-putting now because I have to talk. I have to say something. I can't turn a blind eye. I can't make it work. I can't normalize dysfunction. All these things, these are my weaknesses. I can't do them. And sometimes I really wish I could. Sometimes it's good to be able to just keep quiet and get on with things. No, me, I'm not like that. I have to be asking you questions. So is this how you are? Is this how it's going to be? Is this what I have to look forward to? Me, I'll be asking. So with these ladies, with Danae and Geneviève has a secret notebook in which she notes the slights and hurts of the day. And get this, the punishment that she will met out to her husband. I think we were calling him Francois. Quote, I write down in my notebook the main events that occurred during the evening. His negative account of our son's first month, the anecdote of his birthday party where he does not mention me, and above all, Clementine. A line with a fountain pen to record his betrayal with the bitter taste of supermarket fruit. End quote. Let's take a little break here because when we come back, things are about to take a turn. Okay, just talk to him, woman. That's what I'm reading this book, I'm screaming in my head. I'm watching the interview, I'm screaming in my head, just talk to him. But no, it's not possible. These women dare not talk to the man, lest the men leave. Danae notes that she would cry in the closet, very attention-seeking behavior, hoping that he would find her crying. But then once he found her crying, did she say, this is why I'm crying, because you stepped on my foot? No, she would say, I just miss my dad, who had passed away, unfortunately, or something like that. Scanner, please. Ladies, you must open your mouth and talk. I say this. Don't listen to me if you want. If you want to stay married, because then maybe you end up single like me. I can't take care of you. Who am I? Continue, please. Cry in your closet. I can't help you. But in both cases, number 4, this lack of talking leads to some of the most fucked up shit that you can imagine. These women start writing plays, days of our lives level storylines. That notebook that Geneviève has, it's not a diary. It's not, dear diary, today he called me a clementine, blah, blah, blah. He didn't do this. He didn't hug me in the No, it's a punishment book. It has 3 columns: crime, punishment, and date. What? Every time that her husband does something... Every time that her husband does something that hurts her, she punishes him. Now, some of the punishments, she says they are small. So, he does something small. The next time that he calls her, she doesn't pick up the phone. Oy, okay. The amount of energy that it takes to be married in these situations that are being described, these ladies could have been running full countries. Thing is, sometimes the punishments are super extreme. For example, the clementine, the fruit that I keep talking about. Let me explain. At dinner with friends, Louise and Pierre also have names. They play a game in which everyone has to describe everyone else by a fruit. Already, every right-thinking person should be thinking, abort mission. But this little group goes ahead. Quote, "That's when my husband chose the clementine for me. I try not to show how hurt I am. Is he trying to tease me or get a reaction from me? I question him in a light tone without insisting. He tells me that he can't explain why he chose this fruit for me, but that it suits me well. And my husband gets up immediately to pour himself some more wine. Is this a coincidence or is he running away from confrontation? I know my husband. I know the finesse of his gaze. I know his insight and correctness of association of ideas. I know how easily it is possible to sketch a person in 1 or 2 formulas. I have to face the facts. The man I've been married to for over 10 years thinks I'm a clementine." Even to say those words, don't you feel stupid? Anyway, for Louise, my husband chooses pineapple. Before my eyes, he associates his best friend's wife with a summery and exotic fruit, tangy and generous. He mixes it with Latin America and implies, I'm sure, that he's not insensitive to the juicy fruit of this tropical plant. Hey. My husband, therefore, considers that his best friend is married to a pineapple while he is married to a clementine. He lives with a winter fruit, an ordinary and cheap fruit, a small, ordinary fruit that has neither the deliciousness of orange nor the originality of grapefruit. A fruit ordered into quarters, practical and easy to eat, pre-cut, ready to use, supplied in its packing. End quote. Oh, sis, please, relax. Having said that, to be honest, if somebody called me a clementine, I think I'd be vexed too. I see her point. Except then the husband, you're going to hear from him in a little bit, explains his reasoning thusly. Quote, "To be honest, I didn't think she'd be so upset about the clementine thing. I thought this fruit suited her well. It's deliciously tangy, and you could devour 1,000 of them without getting tired." End quote. Okay, described like that, it's not so bad. It means he likes her. He can eat her forever. Nevertheless, who wouldn't want to be a pineapple? Personally, I gave it some thought. Maybe I'd want to be sugarcane because I love sugarcane. But, or a mango. I think maybe I'm more like a mango. Hard seed in the middle. And I think that's probably accurate because people are surprised when they get close to me, I think. The warmth and sweetness only go so far if you want to take me as a whole. You know what I mean? Anyway, back to Geneviève. In the face of her husband calling her a clementine, she does what I can only describe, and I'm sure you would agree with me, as an overreaction in her efforts to punish her husband. I told you about the notebook. She notes it down. And then she has sex with another man. That's on Thursday, the day after the dinner. Apparently, she's had a man on hand. They've been flirting for 3 or 6 months. And then finally, because her husband pisses her off, she follows through in retaliation. His name is Maxime. They meet in a hotel. Quote. Oh, this quote is from afterwards, where she's explaining how it really doesn't do anything for her to be sleeping with these other men. These meetings have only one goal: to find a way to alleviate the romantic pressure that weighs entirely on my husband by distributing it between several people. That's why I never feel guilty about being unfaithful. How could I, since I do it out of love for my husband? And then I know to set limits for myself. I've only ever cheated on my husband on Thursdays. End quote. I got to this part of the book and I didn't know what to do with that. What? Then, because, while I've been doing this podcast, I keep emphasizing, this book is fiction, this book is fiction. But the reason why I'm juxtaposing the book with Derrick Jaxn is because every time I'm like, this is fiction, Derrick says, not for me. I watched Danae's interview, and does this woman not start talking about how in the face of Derrick's infidelities at university, she had a friend, Fabian, she names him, we all know him now. And she used to try and use this man to make her man jealous. She said we had the same car, so we used to do car racing, and I used to make sure that we take pictures or videos or something so that he can see what. Now, apparently she doesn't go as far as Geneviève, aiming only to give the impression of cheating without actually doing it. But oh my gosh, aren't you tired? Where are you getting that energy from? Imagine being one of these ladies sitting around plotting how to punish a man. What? If you are currently, please, my sister, if you're listening to this podcast, you're one of my 3 listeners, and you are out there doing that kind of useless mathematics, I beg you, drink water and take a nap. You'll feel better. There are better ways to get somebody's attention, but honestly, once you get to that level of toxicity, you're basically drinking bleach. Is it worth it? Anyway, unfortunately, Derrick's 100 women are not the only acts of utter strumpetry. Yes, strumpetry that we witness, because Geneviève, after sleeping with Maxime on Thursday, has an emotional breakdown on Saturday. And I do mean to slut shame, because unlike Maxime, Saturday has real victims. I hope you're sitting down. In fact, let me quote one more time from the Campaign to End Loneliness on the subject of unhelpful thinking. This is where, because of our own mental processes, we end up being our own worst enemies. We focus on the wrong things or too strongly on certain things and end up making very emotional decisions, which can cost us a lot. From the Campaign report, quote, examples of common unhelpful thinking include 1. Catastrophizing. The tendency to blow negative things out of proportion and think the worst of any situation. This thinking error can be one of the most damaging ones because constantly interpreting future events in the worst possible light undermines confidence and can seriously demotivate. Black or white thinking, that's number 2. The tendency is to only see the extremes of a situation. There is never middle ground, and this way of thinking can inhibit the possibility of flexibility in people's responses. Mind reading, number 3. This is when people imagine that they know what the other person is thinking. The reality is that we can never know, we can only ever guess. This thinking error is at the heart of so many difficulties that people encounter with other people. People can imagine so many hurts and slights visited upon them without a shred of evidence. End quote. So on Saturday, our friend Jen does this. All 3. In a big way. It's her daughter's birthday party. So they've thrown a little birthday party for the daughter. She's a bit grudging about it. She's like, when can I stop doing this? She really doesn't enjoy being a mother. And they have the thing for the child. And obviously they've got friends who've come over to support them and what. Fine. Excellent. Oh my gosh, it's been more than an hour. I'm so sorry. Seeing her husband talking to her friend Louise, the one from Wednesday at dinner, the pineapple, she's like, the man is talking to her in a too friendly way. She's like, he's devouring her with his eyes. He's like, he's looking at her as though she's telling him the secrets of creation. And, quote, so I totally lose it. It's no longer my brain that's in charge. It's my gut. I see myself dragging Pierre, Louise's husband, the pineapple's husband, inside on the pretext of needing help in the kitchen. He follows me without really understanding, but without really resisting either. He realizes that we're going up to the first floor and that the kitchen is on the ground floor. I close the bathroom lock behind me and lunge at him. My husband devoured his wife with his eyes. I devour her husband with my tongue. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. At first surprise, his mouth gradually responds to my mouth. He pulls my hair back, as if to resist for a moment, but then gives in when I slip my fingers into his pants. He just has time to articulate. But what are you doing? I slide my panties between my legs and guide them within my hand. As he penetrates me, he grabs my breasts in desperation. He clings to them like two climbing holds. Everything disappears. The door against my butt, the bathroom where I take a shower every morning, the husband of my closest friend. I am transported somewhere in the Alps in the middle of a major route, 300 meters above the void. There is something dizzying about his desperate jerks. Is it the ban on extramarital sex, or does Pierre show the same brutality with Lucy? I thought her name was Louise. When I first read it, I thought she was imagining it, but no, she did that. She slept with with her friend's husband, and also her husband's best friend, a very tight circle, in the bathroom at her daughter's birthday party, with the husband outside in the garden, and the friend's wife, the pineapple. What's more, when she comes out, she feels as though he might have seen her. The husband. He's looking straight at her. No further comments. What else can I say about this level of... Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, this is a good time for us to talk about the husbands. What are they doing and thinking in all of this? In the case of Derrick, sleeping around. Pretty simple. In one of the many videos that they made to try and show that everything was hunky-dory, he decides to confess, but somehow can't bring himself to quite do it, so he talks about himself in the third person, referring to Derrick Jaxn as though it's his brother. Quote, the truth is, Derrick Jaxn was involved with other women outside the marriage, end quote. I think that's a weird way of speaking. It makes sense if you are Clark Kent and your alter ego is Superman, but his only name is Derrick Jaxn. In psychology lectures, they would call this dissociation, but I'm not a professional, so okay. Also, 100 women plus sex tapes is not involved. That's beyond the thing after involved. But anyway, it's up to you now to judge if he is the worst husband in this story. If you're listening on Spotify, please complete the poll. So, Janvier's unnamed husband, whom I believe we're calling Francois, well, let me present him in his own words, which you only read as an epilogue. It's a secret hidden chapter at the end of the book. Quote, my little wife writes everything down. She goes to so much trouble. End quote. He knows. He knows about the notebook. He knows about her punishments, her little system. He knows that she's spying on him. She reads his emails. He knows. Not only that, he is actively playing mind games with her. I don't know, is it to punish her for sleeping with other men? Or I don't know. Has he been doing this the whole time? I don't know. Anyway, at some point, one of the things that really frustrates her is because one of the nights they're sleeping. Remember, this is only in 1 week. One of the nights they're sleeping and he says 3 times in his sleep, I love you. I love you. I love you. And she's like, oh my gosh, my husband, he really loves me. He can't even stop himself saying it in the middle of the night. Then the next day she asks him, do you remember saying this? And he's like, no, that never happened. In the epilogue, he says, quote, my favorite part was waking her up in the middle of the night to tell her that I loved her. Seeing her beam with happiness the next day before calling me in a panic a few hours later to ask for confirmation. Obviously, and like every time, I quietly denied it. I see her going crazy when I do that. It's incredible when I think about it. You can still believe your ears. I repeated it 3 times. Have more confidence in yourself, my darling. Gain confidence. It is not possible to doubt yourself to this extent. My wife's vulnerability is dizzying. How far can I go before she reacts? Will she never put up the slightest resistance to me? Will she end up rebelling one day? This man is treating his wife like a science experiment. Again, revealing the extent to which he goes to drive her crazy. I'm using that in the, like clinical, like crazy sense, yeah? Quote, I have to admit that I pushed her to the limit in recent days. My insistent glances at the pretty waitress at the Italian restaurant on Wednesday lunchtime, falling asleep without a word to wish her good night in the middle of a conversation, making her very afraid this morning by slipping to her that we need to talk. End quote. So the waitress that she was jealous of, he was flirting with her. He deliberately fell asleep without saying goodnight. She put in the notebook. Silly things like not holding her hand on the sofa, also in the notebook. And then on Sunday, the last day of this book, the best is saved for last. Sunday morning, he hits her up with, we need to talk. It's important. And Janvier spends the rest of the day wondering if he knows. She's basically like, he knows. He's in the notebook. He knows about Maxine. He knows about Pierre. But why is he breaking up with me now? Maybe he doesn't know. Basically, just the whole day. Because he says this in the morning. Yeah? She's basically like, my world is falling apart. He's going to leave me. The moment that I've been waiting, the moment that I've been dreading, it's happening. I begin to know. You can't treat people like that. You can't treat people that you love like this. What is going on? Is this marriage? Is this love? Is this how people behave? Is this what you people are going through? You 3 people who are listening right now. No. I take comfort in knowing that not everybody, but if you are listening on Spotify, please feel free. I'm going to set up a poll. Let us know if you've ever played this kind of mind games in a relationship. And then number 2, who do you think is the worst husband? Derrick or Francois? Because me, when I read this, I was flabbergasted. My gasta was flabbered. My flabber was gasted. Both sides. Just what? I was so shocked. Listen to this part. Listen. Quote, this week has been particularly intense, I admit. But disappearing with Pierre during our daughter's birthday? Seriously? Like, this man knows everything. Everything. He even notes that he aims to sleep with his wife every night that she has slept with someone else to mark his territory. I don't want to generalize, but if you are somebody who finds this kinds of thing exciting, you want to give it a go, you want to be doing inside, outside, I have to point out, this might be limited to men of a certain demographic. And I don't think it's all demographics that you can be doing these kinds of things with. Pick up, please. Then, after making her worry all day, he sits on the bed, he holds her hand and he says, you know, we're getting on a little bit, but I want us to have another baby. And obviously she's saying yes because she doesn't want to lose him. What a nice man, you think. He really loves her. He's ready to forgive and forget. Absolutely not. Listen to this shit. Quote, I need to establish a calm climate between us to implement my latest guys. I'm so afraid. You know, when I read about her and Maxine in the hotel, I was like, that poor guy. How can she be? Quote, This week, I discovered a new male contraception. That's what gave me the idea to suggest she have a third child. A thermal and reversible method that will be easy to hide from her, thanks to which my woman will believe that she has become sterile, or worse, already menopausal. It will distress her for months not to be able to give me what I want. She will die of worry that I will leave her for a younger woman capable of giving me a child. I may use this contraceptive method for a few months, and when she no longer expects it, I will make her pregnant. Besides, she will love this child less if I give him to her right away. End quote. Listen, sometimes she's not crazy. He is making her that way. And in this case, I don't know, is it a joke? Is it a punishment? Is it whatever? But it brings me to the very crux of this matter. If it takes this much effort to love Daneya, Derrick, the effort that you take to fold yourself into somebody's world, the mind games, the punishments, the pretend, cheating, going through phones, emails, watching sex tapes, reading secret journals, writing in secret journals, crying in the closet, whatever other hell anybody else might be going through now, I have to ask, what are the red lines? When do you say, no, that's too far? When you say, okay, it's okay, I'm going to go now. 100 women, and she was still standing there doing video, Salvation Helmet, just to call yourself Mrs. Somebody. I don't know. But in all of that, and this is how the book ends, these are the last lines of the book. This man makes it clear that he not only knows what he's doing, he knows that she will never leave him, regardless. Quote, no notebook or codified system for me. I leave that to my wife. I act according to my desires. I do what I want. I find her when I miss her. I move away when she annoys me. Seeing her willing to do anything for me is comfortable. Comfortable too, above all, reassuring. No woman will ever love me like her. She's my wife. End quote. Listen, sometimes someone is digging a hole in your spirit to fill up the hole in their own, and you have to be careful. When Derrick Jaxn moved on, he was upstairs in the house, and she was downstairs. He sent her a message. He said, I'm done with this marriage and with you. Even after that, she still made video to defend him. And yet by then, he'd already seen that she had no more value. He had sucked out everything that he needed out of her, moved on to the new girlfriend. Left her to pick up the pieces, start again. Obviously with the children, because which new girlfriend is going to want your children with them? Let me get my land sleep mats for my bathroom and keep my phone with me at all times, please, because for me, it's simply not worth it. But if that's you, if that's your thing, you do your thing, sis, go for it. Now, disclaimer, then thankfully, I know that there are lots of happy couples. Please speak more loud, you people. We spoke about Mevlut on Wednesday, but the sad, angry ladies are also enough that we should address them. And this is what I try to do today, to put myself in your shoes, to understand why leaving is not just an option, to understand the little acts of defiance that you might undertake in an effort to balance the scales. But in the end, I have to be honest, and this is where I stand. It's not a difficult choice for me. I would always rather be respected than loved. Or to tone down that statement for the detractors, I'd rather be more respected than I am loved. For under the guise of freedom or weakness, love will always take what respect would ask for. Love will always say sorry where respect would make restitution. Love will always forget where respect would never dare. In unequal relationships, respect for me is a better balm for the pain than love. It is respect that at least gives the weaker party access to empathy because the stronger party doesn't want to experience the same thing. Love never concedes ground because its very presence is given as evidence of benevolence, of goodwill, of the absence of harm. I'm here, aren't I? I married you, didn't I? But it is respect that draws red lines and ensures that they are never breached. Love is wonderful, But for me, in a 3-course meal of love, passion, and respect, respect is always the main. Thank you for joining me for this very long episode. What a ride that was, but thanks for sticking on until the end. Tomorrow is our last day where we'll be talking about the seduction of Rustum Bey and the role that food plays in love, from Louis de Bernier's Birds Without Wings. Thank you.